It was Christmas Eve in Carnation, Washington. Inside the Anderson family home, the air was warm with the scent of pine and wrapping paper scattered across the table. Outside, the winter sky was fading, and the quiet country property sat tucked away behind a locked gate. By nightfall, the scene inside had changed. The tree still stood, lights glowing softly, but the living room told another story. The phone line had gone dead. Footsteps had stopped, and in the silence, the fate of 3 generations was sealed before anyone could call for help. What happened that night would leave a small community in shock and reveal a chain of events driven by resentment, betrayal, and something far darker. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Wayne Anderson, age 60, was a respected Boeing engineer who had built not only a long career but also a solid, loving marriage with his wife, Judy Anderson. Judy, 61, worked for the United States Postal Service and was equally admired in their close-knit community of Carnation, Washington. For 31 years, the couple had shared a life together, raising 3 children: Mary, Scott, and Michelle. Mary, their eldest daughter, lived quietly in North Bend. Their middle child, 32-year-old Scott Anderson, was married to 31-year-old Erica Mantle Anderson. The young couple were devoted parents to 2 children, Olivia, age 5, and Nathan, age 3. Living in Black Diamond, about 25 minutes from Wayne and Judy, Scott worked long hours in construction to provide for his family, while Erica dedicated herself to caring for the children full-time. The youngest of the Anderson children, 29-year-old Michelle Kristen Anderson, was a very different personality. She lived with her boyfriend, 29-year-old Joseph Thomas McEnroe, in Fall City. The two had first met in an online fantasy fiction chat room, quickly forming a bond that led them to move in together in 2004. Renting a mobile home, Michelle listed her job on the application as a night security guard for Nintendo, while Joseph stated he was employed at Target. Neighbors remembered the couple as strange and difficult to approach. Some noted they would avoid eye contact and react with hostility to the smallest perceived offenses, such as a car parking in their spot or a neighbor's pet straying into their yard. Michelle often called herself the black sheep of the family. She told others her relationship with her parents was volatile, claiming her father had hit her and that her mother was cold and unkind. Judy, however, worried about Michelle's life choices and regularly confided in her best friend, Linda, about her concerns. Judy made monthly trips to Michelle's home, always bringing food and necessities. Michelle claimed she had no desire to live on her parents' property, yet by 2007, she and Joseph had done exactly that, moving into a trailer on Wayne and Judy's land, rent-free. By Christmas Eve of 2007, tensions within the family remained largely unseen to outsiders. Wayne and Judy were hosting the holiday gathering at their Carnation home. Scott, Erica, and the children planned to arrive in the evening to share the festivities. But before the celebration could begin, Michelle and Joseph, already on the property, entered the main house around 4 p.m. One carried a revolver, the other, a handgun. Inside, Judy was busy wrapping presents in a back room. Joseph distracted her while Michelle confronted her father. Her attempt to shoot him failed. Whether due to a misfire or a missed shot remains uncertain. Joseph stepped in, raising his weapon and firing a fatal shot to Wayne's head. Michelle and Joseph then turned their attention to Judy, shooting her 3 times. The couple dragged both bodies to a shed behind the house, attempting to hide the evidence by covering blood with towels and rugs. Roughly an hour later, Scott, Erica, and the children arrived, unaware of the horror that had unfolded. They entered the living room, settling on the couch, when Michelle suddenly opened fire on her brother. Multiple rounds struck Scott, killing him where he sat. Erica was shot soon after, wounded but alive long enough to grab the cordless phone. At 5:13 p.m., she managed to dial 911 despite being hit 3 times, her children just feet away as the nightmare continued. Joseph McEnroe snatched the phone from Erica's hands, yanking out the batteries before hurling it violently against the wall. The sudden silence ended the desperate 911 call mid-sentence. Erica's pleas for mercy filled the room, but Joseph raised his weapon and fired a single fatal shot to her head. She collapsed instantly. The chaos did not end there. Joseph turned his attention to the children. 5-year-old Olivia was shot first, her life taken in an instant. Just moments later, 3-year-old Nathan, still small enough to believe in kindness, picked up the fallen phone batteries from the floor. In an innocent gesture, he reached out to hand them back to Joseph. Without hesitation, Joseph leveled the gun at the boy. Nathan was still clinging to his mother's chest when the shot rang out, killing him instantly. The 911 call Erica had made moments earlier had triggered a response from local deputies. At 5:45 p.m., law enforcement arrived at the Anderson property to investigate. Michelle, anticipating that the police might come, had already taken steps to keep them out. She locked the front gate at the end of the long driveway, blocking vehicle access. Without making any effort to enter the property or check on the occupants, the responding officers turned away, completely unaware of the massacre that had just taken place inside. 2 days later, on December 26, 2007, Judy Anderson failed to appear for her shift at the United States Post Office in Carnation. Her longtime friend and co-worker Linda called her home, but there was no answer. Alarmed, Linda decided to drive to the Anderson residence to check on her. When she arrived, she found the property's gate locked, just as the police had 2 days earlier. Unlike the deputies, Linda walked around the barrier, determined to reach the house. The front door was shut and she knocked repeatedly, calling out Judy's name. Receiving no response, she tried the door and was startled to find it unlocked. An unusual detail, as Judy was known to always keep her home secured. Pushing the door open, Linda stepped inside and called again. "Judy, it's Linda. We're worried about you." Silence filled the air. Then, looking down, she saw the body of a man lying motionless on the floor. At first, she thought perhaps he was unconscious from carbon monoxide poisoning and instinctively prepared to drag him outside. But as she stepped closer, horror gripped her. He had been shot in the head. As her eyes adjusted, Linda saw more victims lying nearby. Realizing the enormity of the situation, she rushed to call 911, her voice breaking as she reported, "There's been a murder. There are 3 people dead that I can see right now. There's a baby, and a man, and a woman, and she's my best friend." By 9:30 a.m., King County Sheriff's deputies had arrived. Inside the house, they found the bodies of Scott Anderson, his wife Erica, and their two children. Nathan was still pressed against his mother's chest, as if seeking safety in death, while Olivia lay beneath her mother's body. All four had been executed with gunshots to the head. A search of the property led investigators to a shed behind the house, where they discovered two more victims, Wayne and Judy Anderson. Like the others, both had been shot. Hours later, at approximately 11 a.m., Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe drove up to the crime scene. Detectives immediately noticed their unusual demeanor. Michelle introduced herself as Wayne and Judy's daughter, explaining that she lived in a trailer on the property. Neither she nor Joseph asked what had happened, why law enforcement was present in such numbers, or whether her family was safe. This lack of concern, amid yellow crime scene tape, a line of police vehicles, and a mobile command center, stood out sharply to investigators. Sensing that the pair were withholding information, detectives separated Michelle and Joseph for questioning. Both gave a strange explanation for their whereabouts on Christmas Eve, claiming they had set out to drive to Las Vegas to get married, but had gotten lost and decided to return home instead. In their initial account, Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe claimed that on the morning of Christmas Eve, they had gone to Michelle's parents, Wayne and Judy Anderson, to share happy news. They were planning to get married. They said Wayne and Judy had been delighted for them. But when investigators revisited their statements, the cracks in the story quickly appeared. Under pressure, both Michelle and Joseph admitted that this version of events was a fabrication they had agreed upon beforehand. Michelle's composure shattered. In a sudden outburst, she exclaimed, "What the hell have I done? I'm a monster." After waiving their constitutional rights, the pair gave full and lengthy confessions, admitting to the murders of all 6 members of the Anderson family. Michelle even took detectives to the location where she and Joseph had discarded one of the 2 firearms used in the killings. During her interrogation, Michelle made it clear that much of her anger had been directed toward her brother, Scott Anderson. She described how their relationship had once been close, but had deteriorated after he married Erica. She alleged that Scott owed her a significant sum of money, approximately $40,000, stemming from what she claimed were multiple loans given to him over the years, the most recent several years prior. Michelle expressed resentment toward her parents as well, claiming they refused to support her in the dispute with Scott. She believed they favored him and felt they had repeatedly slighted and mistreated her. Adding to her grievances was her anger over Wayne and Judy's request that she and Joseph begin paying rent for the trailer and the land they had been living on rent-free for over a year. When detectives asked why she had chosen to kill her entire family, Michelle's response was chilling. She said she was tired of everybody stepping on her and had decided that if her grievances were not resolved by December 24th, her plan was to eliminate them all. When pressed about the murders of Erica and the children, Michelle stated that she didn't want them living with the memory of what had happened and didn't want any witnesses. Joseph later told investigators that he had been the one to kill the children, explaining that Michelle had instructed him to do so because she could not bring herself to do it personally. They both repeated the claim that they did not want Olivia and Nathan to grow up with the trauma of witnessing their parents' deaths. With the confessions and the details of their motive established, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office formally charged Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe on December 28, 2007, with 6 counts each of aggravated first-degree murder with a firearm. Despite their admissions, the legal process was slow and costly, dragging on for years. 10 months after the killings, In October 2008, the prosecutor announced he would seek the death penalty for both defendants. He cited the magnitude of the crimes, the murders spanning 3 generations, and the killing of 2 young children as factors that justified capital punishment. But this stance met resistance. The judge ruled against pursuing the death penalty, and the Washington governor later declared that no executions would take place while he was in office. Around this time, Michelle herself stated publicly that she wished to be executed. She described the decision as the hardest she had ever made, but one she felt was necessary to take responsibility for her actions. Years later, on September 5, 2013, the Washington State Supreme Court overturned the judge's ruling, reinstating the possibility of capital punishment. The prospect of execution appeared to change Michelle's stance. She withdrew her earlier statements and, with a new legal team in place, shifted her approach. Ultimately, both Michelle Anderson and Joseph McEnroe would be tried separately, nearly 7.5 years after the Christmas Eve massacre. Joseph McEnroe's trial began in January 2015. His defense team presented him as a man coerced into murder by his then-girlfriend, Michelle Anderson. According to the defense, it was Michelle who had harbored the desire to see her family dead, and Joseph was merely a tool in carrying out her plan. Jurors listened to a recorded interview in which Michelle herself told a King County Sheriff's detective that the murders had been her idea from the very beginning. On the tape, she admitted that she had pushed Joseph into it, accepting full responsibility and saying she should have walked away. Joseph's attorneys argued that Michelle had molded him into what they called her attack dog, manipulating him from every possible angle until he agreed to kill. They claimed his mental health struggles, coupled with a fragile emotional state, had made him especially vulnerable to her influence. In court, Joseph's background was also brought under scrutiny. His aunt, Mary Turner, testified about his turbulent childhood, describing a mother who was both financially unstable and emotionally volatile. She alleged that Joseph had been beaten, verbally abused, and used as leverage in her attempts to extract money from her own parents. When testifying in his own defense, Joseph claimed that his decision to kill Olivia and Nathan Anderson was, in his view, a twisted act of mercy. Ending their lives, he insisted, was the only way to free them. He described their deaths as quick and painless, a statement that left the courtroom visibly shaken. On March 25, 2015, after weeks of testimony, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder, along with the associated firearm enhancements. Joseph's demeanor on the stand was peculiar. He appeared heavily medicated, often pausing, sighing, or struggling to find words. At moments, he seemed on the verge of tears. He admitted that thoughts of the murders haunted him constantly, lingering in his mind every day since that night. However, the senior deputy prosecutor accused Joseph of deliberately altering his behavior, even modifying his speech patterns and appearance, in a calculated attempt to draw sympathy from the jury. Joseph, for his part, expressed remorse, claiming he had taken the lives of people who had shown him nothing but kindness. He told the court that if there were any way to undo what he had done, to bring them back or ease the pain he had caused, he would do it without hesitation. During closing arguments, the prosecution urged the jury to impose the ultimate penalty, death. Addressing the panel, the senior deputy prosecutor told them that the punishment was both just and necessary. But the jurors could not reach a unanimous decision. 8 voted in favor of execution, while 4 opposed it. Without unanimity, Washington law required the court to impose the only remaining option: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On May 13, 2015, Joseph McEnroe was formally sentenced, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. 8 years after the murders, Michelle Anderson finally faced trial. Her proceedings began in January 2016, but the death penalty, initially a possibility, was taken off the table. The prosecutor explained that after two separate juries in recent capital cases, including McEnroe's, had declined to impose death sentences, it was no longer in the interest of justice to pursue it against Michelle. Given that she was considered equally culpable, her potential punishment would be aligned with Joseph's: life without parole. Throughout the trial, Michelle's demeanor fluctuated. At times she sat with her head lowered, appearing tearful, but she chose not to speak to the court directly. Her defense attorney claimed Michelle was deeply remorseful and had apologized to everyone affected. The prosecutor took a very different position, describing her motive as pure, unadulterated greed. In her first police interview, he noted, she had mentioned money over 35 times while explaining why she killed her family. Jurors heard recordings from that interview in which Michelle contradicted herself repeatedly. She shifted from calling herself a monster for killing her family to claiming her parents and brother had abused her for years. No credible evidence was ever presented to support her abuse allegations. In reality, those who knew Wayne, Judy, and Scott described them as warm, compassionate people. Erica and her children were equally blameless. Testimony revealed that Michelle harbored deep animosity toward Erica, believing she had driven a wedge between Michelle and Scott. Michelle's defense team called no witnesses. They cited years of difficulty working with her, noting her refusal to cooperate or even communicate with them. The courtroom, however, heard from the victims' family members. Erica's mother addressed Michelle directly, recalling that after being shot, Erica still managed to call 911, not just for herself, but to try to save her children. Michelle's sister, Mary Anderson, also spoke. Her voice heavy with grief, she told Michelle that she would have the rest of her life in prison to reflect on her actions. The judge commended the resilience of the secondary victims, family members, friends, first responders, and jurors, who had endured gruesome testimony and graphic crime scene images. He acknowledged their suffering, saying, "Even though you didn't do anything wrong, it's still your fault. You've all suffered tremendous losses. Fortunately, this lengthy chapter of your nightmare is almost over." As the proceedings drew to a close, Michelle erupted, shouting at the judge and accusing her court-appointed attorneys of lying to her. She said she wanted to leave jail temporarily to hire private counsel, but her request was denied. She placed blame squarely on the judge, claiming he was violating her rights. On March 4, 2016, Michelle Anderson was convicted of 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. On April 21st, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, matching the fate of her former boyfriend and co-defendant. With both trials concluded, the Anderson family finally saw justice served, though it came 8 years after the murders. The precise motive behind Michelle's actions may never be known, whether it was greed, jealousy, rage, or a combination of all three. What is certain is that two people bound by a toxic relationship destroyed 3 generations in a single night. Perhaps Michelle could not stand to see the happiness Scott had found with Erica, or the close-knit family they had built together. As for Joseph, his participation remains one of the case's most disturbing mysteries. With no clear personal motive, he still chose to take part, and even carried out the murders of the children. The tragedy remains devastating. Today, Joseph McEnroe serves his sentence at Washington State Penitentiary. Michelle Anderson is held at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. Neither will ever be released. And while justice was served in the legal sense, the wounds left by the Carnation murders will never fully heal. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. That night was supposed to be simple. Brittany Steyer had spent the evening with friends, laughing and celebrating. Now, all she needed to do was pick up her kids and head home. Her best friend was with her, riding in the passenger seat, both of them feeling a little on edge as they drove through the dark Florida roads. When they pulled into the driveway of the small trailer, something didn't feel right. There were people outside, empty beer cans scattered around, and a heavy tension in the air. Brittany tried to stay calm as she walked toward the door to get her children, but in just a few minutes, everything would go horribly wrong. And what happened next would change everything forever. Brittany Steyer was born on June 10, 1989, in the small city of Stuart, Florida. She grew up just a short drive away in Port St. Lucie, where she was raised alongside her older sister Christy by their parents, Betsy and Joe. Betsy, a minister, went on to found her own church, while Joe built a career with a development company. Although Brittany's parents divorced when she was around 5, they remained committed to co-parenting, ensuring that both daughters split their time between homes without feeling torn between them. From an early age, Brittany's vibrant personality and warm spirit stood out. As a teenager, she spent her summers volunteering at a church camp in Silver Springs. There, she became known for organizing dance competitions, acting in skits, and taking part in talent shows. Her confidence and ability to inspire others were evident even in those early experiences. In her early 20s, Brittany began working as a cashier at a local Winn-Dixie grocery store. It didn't take long for her strong work ethic and outgoing charm to get noticed. She quickly climbed the ranks, moving from cashier to front-end manager, and later to a grocery manager role overseeing both the grocery and produce departments. Around this time, Brittany's life took a turn when she met Edward June McNeil Harris Jr., a 28-year-old employee at the local Burger King. June, who already had 5 children from 2 previous relationships, might have seemed like a complicated choice, but Brittany's nurturing nature drew her to him. She embraced his children with open arms, treating them as if they were her own. Friends, however, were wary from the beginning. Heather, one of Brittany's closest friends, recalled feeling a deep unease when she first encountered June. Although their introduction was brief, just a quick meeting while Brittany picked up food at Burger King, Heather sensed that something was off. Heather's concerns deepened after she discreetly asked her husband, a police officer, about June. His reaction was instant and severe. Without going into details, he urgently warned that Brittany needed to stay away from him. Alarmed, Heather tried to caution Brittany, but the warnings fell on deaf ears. Brittany defended June fiercely, convinced that others simply didn't understand the bond they shared. Despite the concerns, Brittany's relationship with June deepened quickly. She saw him as someone who brought joy into her life, someone who understood her adventurous, full-hearted nature. It was easy for Brittany to overlook the warning signs, choosing instead to believe in the good she saw in him. By early 2016, just months into their relationship, Brittany learned she was pregnant. The news filled her with excitement. She embraced the idea of becoming a mother wholeheartedly, seeing it as the start of a beautiful new chapter. However, that happiness was soon eclipsed by a devastating development. Brittany went into premature labor at just 5 months, setting into motion a series of events that would ultimately redefine the course of her life. The situation Brittany faced in the hospital was dire. As a first-time mother, overwhelmed and frightened, she needed support more than ever. She reached out to her sister, Christy, who rushed to her side. But June was nowhere to be found. Christy frantically tried to reach him, calling his phone, driving to his trailer, pounding on the doors and windows. Hours passed, but June never appeared. Tragically, Brittany miscarried her daughter, a baby she had already named Jade. The loss was devastating. June's absence during that critical moment revealed a side of him that could no longer be ignored. It was a red flag that stood in stark contrast to the image Brittany had tried so hard to believe in. Yet, in a pattern that would repeat itself, Brittany chose to forgive him. She clung to hope and carried on with the relationship. Seeking a fresh start, Brittany moved in March 2016 to live with her father in the city of Bradenton. The move offered her a chance to heal, to build a new life away from the pain and disappointment. She quickly found work as a salesperson at a sign company where her father was employed. Her natural charm and strong work ethic once again won over those around her. But distance did little to sever the bond between Brittany and June. Most weekends she made the 6-hour drive back to see him, shouldering all the travel and expenses. It was Brittany who invested in the relationship, while June gave little in return, a pattern that would come to define their time together. By 2017, tired of the long-distance strain, Brittany convinced June to move to Bradenton. She found an apartment for them and helped him land a job with her brother-in-law's appliance installation company. But almost immediately, problems surfaced. Though June was capable at the work, his temper often flared, leading to conflicts with coworkers and repeated warnings from his employer. As they settled into their new life, the cracks widened. Brittany's once bright personality began to dim. Her coworkers noticed she had grown quieter, more withdrawn. She started covering up, wearing long sleeves and pants, even during Florida's sweltering summers. When asked, she would brush it off with easy excuses, never letting anyone get close enough to see the truth. Brittany's family saw the changes too. Her mother and stepfather, who had met June early on, sensed his controlling nature. They noticed how Brittany worked multiple jobs to support their household, while June contributed little and demanded much. She gave everything she had, emotionally, financially, physically. He took and took until there was almost nothing left. Her mother reflected later that Brittany, raised to love unconditionally and see the best in people, believed she could heal the broken parts of June. If she loved him enough, she thought, maybe she could fix him. In February 2018, Brittany discovered she was pregnant. Joy and apprehension collided. She was thrilled at the idea of becoming a mother again, but quietly fearful of what the future might hold. Her fears deepened when she showed up to a family gathering with a dark bruise under her eye, poorly hidden by makeup. When questioned, she claimed she had fallen in the shower, another excuse offered with a tight smile. On March 2, 2018, Brittany gave birth to a baby boy. For a fleeting moment, there was happiness. Their little family seemed complete. But just 3 months later, Brittany learned she was pregnant again. While the news was unexpected, Brittany welcomed it with her usual optimism, throwing herself into preparations for the new baby. In February 2019, she gave birth to a daughter. With 2 young children and a new, larger apartment to call home, Brittany appeared to be building the life she had always wanted. But behind the facade, the emotional abuse intensified. The walls were closing in. Brittany noticed troubling changes in her son's behavior. He would lash out unexpectedly, mimicking the aggression he had witnessed at home, then immediately seek affection. It was a heartbreaking mirror of the chaos unfolding inside their apartment. This realization shook Brittany to her core. She could no longer deny the truth. By staying, she wasn't just risking her own well-being. She was exposing her children to a dangerous, damaging environment. And for Brittany, a mother whose love knew no bounds, that was a cost she could no longer bear. On January 31st, 2020, Brittany finally made her decision. That morning, June, who had the day off, announced he was going out with friends around 10 or 11 a.m. Brittany didn't argue. Instead, she quietly packed her belongings into plastic bags, loaded them into her car, and left. She called her sister Christy and asked her to meet in Orlando for a trip to Disney World. On the surface, it was a spontaneous getaway, a chance for the children to experience some joy. But beneath it, this trip was Brittany's first real attempt at breaking free, at reclaiming a sense of normalcy for herself and her children. After the weekend, reality returned. Brittany knew she couldn't go back. She reached out to her parents and asked if she could move back in with them. It was a step toward independence, but it was also a dangerous one. June, unwilling to let her go, began flooding her phone with calls and messages, begging, apologizing, threatening, cycling through every tactic to pull her back. Leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time for a victim. Brittany's case would tragically prove this to be true. On February 11th, 2020, Brittany walked into the Sarasota Police Department to file a report against June. She detailed a terrifying incident that had occurred just days earlier. After she left him, Brittany had agreed to meet June briefly to pick up belongings from their shared apartment. What was supposed to be a short, civil exchange turned into a nightmare. Inside the apartment, June held Brittany at gunpoint for hours. He threatened her life, threatened the lives of their children, and painted horrific scenarios, killing Brittany and the children, or killing Brittany and calling her father to come collect them before ending his own life. The terror Brittany endured during those hours was unimaginable, and even more devastating was the fact that her young children witnessed it all. Following her report, June was arrested. At the Sarasota Police Department, he refused to answer questions and demanded an attorney. He was booked into the Sarasota County Jail, facing charges of aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and illegal possession of a firearm, a serious offense for a convicted felon. For Brittany, June's arrest should have been the beginning of a safer, freer life. But in a heartbreaking decision so common among survivors of abuse, Brittany dropped the charges. Persuaded by promises from June's family that he would get therapy, that they would oversee his treatment, Brittany was torn between her fear and her compassion. She later confided in her father that she couldn't bear the thought of their children growing up with their father locked away for life. Her decision was driven by hope, a hope that, tragically, would not be rewarded. In the months that followed, Brittany poured herself into rebuilding her life. She focused on her children, worked hard, and began reconnecting with friends she had drifted away from during her relationship with June. Her Facebook posts showed a woman rediscovering herself, smiling, attending gatherings, laughing again. It was clear to everyone who knew her that Brittany was on the road to healing. But June was never far behind. Despite everything, Brittany allowed June limited contact with the children. She wanted them to have a relationship with their father, even if it meant treading carefully herself. June continued his pattern: apologies, promises, manipulation, all aimed at pulling Brittany back into his orbit. On July 18, 2020, Brittany traveled to Crawfordville to attend a friend's engagement party, excited to fulfill her role as maid of honor. She dropped the children off with June, planning to pick them up the next day. For a while, Brittany allowed herself to enjoy the night, laughing, celebrating, surrounded by friends who were happy to see her smiling again. But as the evening wore on, a message from June arrived. He demanded that she come pick up the children immediately. The change in Brittany was instant. Her face, moments ago full of joy, became tense and worried. She turned to her friend Heather for support and asked her to come along as she went to retrieve the children. Neither of them could have imagined what was about to unfold. The drive was tense. Brittany was visibly nervous, her usual bright demeanor replaced by a heavy, anxious silence. They arrived at June's trailer around 10:30 p.m. The property was cloaked in darkness, lit only by the van's headlights. As Brittany pulled into the driveway, they could see a group of people gathered near an above-ground pool. Beer cans and empty bottles littered a makeshift table, evidence of an ongoing party. Brittany approached the trailer door. June opened it, holding their infant daughter in his arms. With Brittany's little boy trailing behind, the exchange appeared calm at first. Heather watched from the passenger seat as Brittany took the baby and began securing her into the car seat. Then, everything changed. Without warning, June pulled out a firearm. In an instant, gunfire shattered the quiet night. Heather, acting on instinct, jumped into the driver's seat. The side door of the van was still open. She could hear the children screaming in the back. Throwing the van into reverse, she tore down the dirt road, desperate to get them to safety. Moments later, Heather pulled over, her voice trembling as she made a frantic 911 call.
911, say your emergency.
Hey, I am with my friend, and we're down by it, and he just got hurt.
Okay, what do you mean he got?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
How exactly did he get hurt?
He shot her. He was like, okay, so we went to pick up her kids, and we went to pick up her kids, and he come out and was acting really weird, and he started shooting at her.
Okay, and he shot. So he shot her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have one of her kids with me.
Okay.
Oh, the door's open. Crap. Oh, God, I don't know her code. Yeah, her sister.
Okay. Is she conscious? Like, where did she get shot at?
I don't know. I left because I have my child with me, too. I'm trying to get to her sister.
Is she still there?
Yeah, she's still there. I didn't know what else to do. Like, the van door went shut. I gotta pull over. Hold on, baby. Hold on.
Ma'am.
Yes.
On the road right there? Okay.
Hold on, baby. Let me close the fan. Okay.
Amid the chaos and confusion, she struggled to explain what had happened, that Brittany had been shot, that the children were with her, that they had fled for their lives. Back at the scene, June Harris fled in his vehicle. Police units responding to Heather's call quickly spotted a green car speeding away. A pursuit began. June's driving was erratic, turning aimlessly through parking lots, doubling back on roads as if he couldn't decide where to run. The chase ended when June pulled over near Spring Creek Highway. He made no attempt to resist as officers approached and took him into custody. Meanwhile, detectives returned to the scene Brittany had fled from. There, on the ground near the trailer, they found Brittany's body. She had suffered a gunshot wound to the head. Nearby, a baby bottle lay abandoned on the dirt, a stark and heartbreaking reminder of the two young children now left motherless. The news of Brittany's murder devastated her family and sent shockwaves through the community. It was hard to reconcile the vibrant, giving young woman they had known with the brutal reality of her death. In the weeks that followed, more chilling details emerged. Investigators discovered that earlier that evening, June had sent Brittany a series of aggressive text messages. He had demanded sex from her as a reward for looking after the children during the bridal shower. When Brittany didn't respond as he wanted, his messages grew angrier, revealing a dangerous, escalating rage that would culminate in murder. June Harris was charged with first-degree murder, child neglect, fleeing and eluding law enforcement, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. His trial began on December 16, 2022. Despite the defense's efforts to raise doubts, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Text messages, witness accounts, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence all pointed to the same conclusion. On December 21, 2022, the jury delivered its verdict, guilty on all counts. June Harris was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with 3 consecutive 15-year sentences for the additional charges. For Brittany's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice, but no sentence could bring Brittany back. Her children would grow up without their mother, and her family would carry the weight of her absence forever. Brittany's story became a sobering reminder of the unseen battles victims of domestic violence often face, and the devastating cost when their cries for help go unheard. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. On a calm Saturday evening in East Hollywood, something terrible happened inside an apartment just a few blocks from the city's busy streets. No one heard anything unusual, no loud noises, no cries for help. But behind that door, a quiet argument had turned into something much worse. When police and firefighters finally got inside, what they found shocked everyone, even the most experienced officers. How did things go so wrong between Kirtland Ma and the man he trusted the most? And what really happened that night? This is the story of a bright future cut short and a tragedy no one saw coming. Kirtland Ma was born on December 24, 1979, in the city of Scottsdale, located in the eastern part of Maricopa County, Arizona. He was the youngest of two sons born to Peggy and Danny Ma, a Chinese-American couple who had earlier welcomed their first son, Waylon Ma. Kirtland's childhood unfolded in a peaceful and loving environment. He was a deeply cherished child, especially by his maternal grandparents, Wing Doi Jimmy and Ellen Lee. With his easygoing nature and warm, constant smile, he had a natural charm that endeared him to everyone, and his grandparents felt truly lucky to call him their grandson. Although he showed early signs of academic potential during elementary school, it was in high school that Kirtland's passion for learning truly flourished. He wasn't just a gifted student, he was also deeply curious, always eager to expand his knowledge beyond the standard curriculum. After his regular school hours, he would attend advanced mathematics classes at another institution, determined to challenge himself further. One afternoon, on his way to one of those extra classes, he met a girl named Ann Chung. Though they attended different schools, they were the same age. A brief conversation that day was enough for Ann to be struck by Kirtland's kind demeanor and witty humor. The feeling was mutual, and from that moment on, the two became inseparable. In their third year of high school, they both transferred to the same school in Phoenix. Not long after, Ann found the courage to tell Kirtland how she truly felt. She believed he was her soulmate and confessed her deep love for him. But Kirtland, though caring, didn't share the same feelings romantically. He loved her like a sister. Ann was heartbroken, but in time, she chose to value their friendship over unrequited love, and they continued their bond as close friends. Meanwhile, Kirtland remained focused on his studies with even greater determination. His academic excellence soon stood out, placing him well above many of his peers. In 1997, he took the Standardized School Assessment Test, a pivotal exam in the U.S. for evaluating students' skills in reading, writing, and math, often critical for university admissions. Kirtland's score came close to the perfect 1600 mark, earning him the prestigious title of Presidential Scholar, an honor reserved for the nation's most outstanding students. Despite his academic drive, Kirtland was far from being all about books and grades. He believed in a well-rounded life, and that balance led him to pursue tennis competitively. He often played in city tournaments, many of which took place at local universities, further showcasing his versatility and discipline. In 1998, Kirtland began a new chapter of his life as he entered Yale University. There, he chose to major in American Studies. Settling into campus life, he was assigned to one of Yale's residential colleges, where he shared a room with Michael. The two quickly became close friends. What stood out most to Michael was Kirtland's unwavering kindness and selfless nature. He was someone who gave without expecting anything in return. Michael had been right about his roommate. Kirtland Ma's calm demeanor, patience, and genuine kindness made him naturally magnetic. Connecting with others came easily to him, not because he tried, but because it was simply who he was. His fellow students at Yale quickly took notice. With his captivating presence, sharp intellect, and unpretentious spirit, Kirtland soon earned not only their respect, but also their friendship. As people got to know him better, many realized he possessed a quiet wisdom that made him a trusted confidant. Friends often turned to him for advice, and Kirtland never let them down. He showed his appreciation not through grand declarations, but through thoughtful gestures. On trips to New York City, just a couple of hours away from campus, he would often return with small gifts for those he cared about. Although he and Ann no longer lived in the same city, their friendship never faded. In one of their many conversations, Ann asked him why he never spoke about dating women. Deep down, she believed his silence was a kind way of sparing her feelings. But she wasn't prepared for the answer Kirtland gave. In a moment of honesty, Kirtland shared a part of himself he had kept private. He simply wasn't attracted to women. With quiet courage, he explained that he was gay. Anne, surprised but open-hearted, listened carefully. Though it saddened her to think that Kirtland hadn't felt safe sharing this earlier, that conversation, free of judgment and full of trust, marked a turning point. It allowed Kirtland to embrace his identity more freely, and from that day forward, he confided in Anne about the men he was dating. When the time came to choose a thesis topic for his undergraduate studies, Kirtland decided to honor both his heritage and his American upbringing. He dove into a project exploring the history of Chinese cuisine in the United States. The result not only highlighted his academic talent, but also earned him the prestigious Henry Hayes Prize, awarded annually to the best senior thesis focused on Asian American experiences. After graduating in 2002, Kirtland set out to fulfill another dream: to see the world. His first stop was China, where he taught English and later participated in a cultural exchange program. This experience took him to Spain, where he lived with a host family and immersed himself in a completely different way of life. Those months abroad gave him clarity about his future. By 2004, Kirtland knew what he wanted next: to become a doctor. Motivated by a deep sense of purpose, he returned to Yale, this time to its School of Medicine. Once again, he stood out for his academic excellence. His medical thesis focused on the application of traditional Chinese medicine in treating HIV patients in Hong Kong. After completing his degree in 2008, Kirtland moved to Manhattan to begin his emergency medicine residency through the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. His training took place at both Jacobi Medical Center and Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx. It was during this time that he met and bonded with Christian, a nurse who would become a close friend. Together, they volunteered with a local organization of about 40 healthcare professionals dedicated to educating New York's LGBTQ+ community about the risks of drug use and unprotected sex. Kirtland's dedication as a doctor became evident when he made a rare and accurate diagnosis involving a patient suffering from an unusual type of fish poisoning. The case was so significant that it was later highlighted in an article in the New York Times. Outside of medicine, Kirtland maintained a vibrant social life. When his schedule allowed, he attended gatherings, parties, and events throughout the city. It was during this active period that he met Andre Damian Davids. Andre, born in 1977, was a New York native. Little is known about his background, but it is documented that he shared a close bond with his sister. In contrast to Kirtland's sociable nature, Andre was more reserved. He was undergoing medical treatment at the time, though the specifics of his condition were never publicly disclosed. What was known was that his treatment involved prescribed medication, often combined dangerously with other substances. Despite their differences in personality, Kirtland and Andre quickly developed a strong mutual attraction. What began as a connection soon deepened into a romantic relationship. Despite his openness in so many aspects of life, Kirtland chose to keep his relationship with Andre private for a long time. Not even his closest friends or family were aware of it. By the time he completed his medical residency, he felt it was time to take a break from the pace of New York City. Longing to reconnect with his family, Kirtland returned to Arizona in July 2012. He moved in temporarily with his parents, Peggy and Danny, grateful to be home again. Rejuvenated by the change of scenery and the support of his loved ones, Kirtland shared his happiness on social media. Soon after, he began working at 2 hospitals in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Though miles apart, his bond with Andre remained strong. He also kept in touch with his friends in New York, often reuniting with them during visits, whether they came to Arizona or he traveled east. Eventually, Andre began accompanying him on these trips, until in 2013 he decided to move to Arizona permanently to be closer to Kurt Land. That September, Kurt Land posted a photo of the two of them together online, making their relationship public for the first time. The revelation surprised some friends, including Christian, but they warmly welcomed Andre into their circle. They didn't just offer polite gestures, they genuinely tried to include him socially. However, from the outset, Andre seemed reluctant to connect. His jealousy toward Kirtland's friendships gradually became more noticeable. Over time, this possessiveness intensified, and he began asking Kirtland to avoid spending time with his friends. Kirtland, ever the optimist, remained calm. He didn't allow Andre's behavior to derail his own goals. He continued making plans with Christian, even organizing trips together. Rather than be discouraged, Kirtland believed that a new environment might help their relationship. He dreamed of moving to a more open and accepting place for LGBTQ+ people, somewhere they could thrive as a couple. After giving it thoughtful consideration, California seemed like the perfect destination. He was excited by the idea and shared his vision with Andre, assuring him that they would embark on this new chapter together. Once they relocated, Kirtland began working at a hospital in Gardena. Simultaneously, he looked forward to being more active in the LGBTQ+ community. California, with its vibrant culture and inclusivity, felt like the ideal place to do just that. True to his enthusiastic nature, the prospect energized him deeply. In February 2014, the couple rented an apartment in East Hollywood, a lively neighborhood known for its nightlife and diversity. Initially, only Andre moved in, as Kirtland had to make a trip to Japan. But upon returning to the U.S. on March 24th, Kirtland sensed immediately that the change in scenery had done little to repair what was broken. The tensions between them still lingered. For the first time, he seriously contemplated ending the relationship. On the afternoon of Saturday, March 29, 2014, after a restless night for Andre, who had used drugs and barely slept, Kirtland decided it was finally time to have the difficult conversation they had avoided for too long. Calmly, he expressed his dissatisfaction with where things were heading. He admitted he was considering dating other people. Andre, unprepared and unwilling to accept the possibility of separation, refused outright. He also rejected any suggestion of an open relationship, insisting on exclusivity. The conversation quickly escalated into an argument. Tensions flared until both men reached for kitchen knives. What began as a verbal exchange devolved into a physical struggle. Kirtland, in a moment of regained clarity, attempted to de-escalate. But Andre, overtaken by rage, did not stop. In a violent outburst, he seized the weapon and stabbed Kirtland repeatedly, until he collapsed, lifeless. Panicked and unsure of what to do next, Andre called his sister. He told her they had a serious fight, but withheld the horrifying truth of what had just happened. Alarmed by her brother's unstable behavior and fearing he might harm himself, Andre's sister immediately contacted the police, sharing all the information she had. Officers were dispatched to the address she provided to conduct a wellness check. However, when no one responded at the door, they eventually left the scene. As the hours passed and she remained without news, Andre's sister called the police again. This time, officers returned to the apartment, this time with a team of firefighters. At 4:55 p.m. on Saturday, March 29, 2014, both teams forced their way into the apartment in East Hollywood. Inside, they discovered a horrific scene. Kirtland lay lifeless on the kitchen floor, the victim of a brutal assault. In the bathroom, Andre was found sitting in the bathtub, injured and holding a knife, threatening to end his own life. Beside him were his cell phone and a bottle of pills. A police officer quickly secured the weapon, and the fire department team removed Andre from the tub. Andre was transported to a nearby hospital for treatment of wounds to his neck and wrists. Meanwhile, paramedics confirmed that there was nothing they could do for Kirtland. Just before 7 p.m., Los Angeles County coroner officially pronounced him dead. The autopsy revealed the full extent of the brutality Kirtland endured. 40 stab wounds inflicted with various sharp kitchen tools. In a deeply disturbing detail, investigators found that Andre had inserted pills into the open wounds, an act of extreme violence that shocked even seasoned professionals. It was clear from the beginning that Andre Davids was the prime suspect. At the hospital, toxicology tests confirmed the presence of multiple substances in his system. Detectives met with Andre in his hospital room. He did not resist questioning. On the contrary, he admitted to the killing and explained the events that led up to it. With remorse and despair, he also expressed a desire not to go on living. On Sunday, March 30th, 2014, after further investigation, Andre was officially arrested at the East Hollywood Sheriff's Station. He was charged with murder involving a deadly weapon and held on a $1 million bail. He was then transferred to the Twin Towers Correctional Facility in Los Angeles. News of Kirtland's murder spread quickly. The case dominated headlines and drew significant media attention. Just a week later, a separate violent incident in the same apartment complex left several people injured, sparking widespread fear among residents. Many began reconsidering whether they felt safe living there. Andre's trial began in December 2015. He faced charges of voluntary manslaughter and second-degree murder. The distinction between the two was critical, as California law required the prosecution to prove whether the crime involved express or implied malice, an essential factor in determining the severity of the sentence. Kirtland's family pushed for the most serious charge, which could result in life imprisonment. The defense countered by claiming Andre's mental state had been compromised by drug use and prescription medications. They emphasized that Andre had no prior history of violence and argued that the killing occurred in the heat of passion. A classic argument for a reduced charge in cases of crimes of emotion. The jury considered several factors, including Kirtland's expressed desire to end the relationship, which may have triggered intense emotional distress in Andre. In the end, the jury concluded that the act was not premeditated. On December 17, 2015, Andre Davids was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The sentencing hearing took place on January 21, 2016, at the Los Angeles Superior Court. The most emotional moment came when Waylon Ma, Kirtland's older brother, addressed the court. He spoke directly to Andre, expressing the anguish and rage of losing his brother in such a brutal way. He wished that the memory of the crime would haunt Andre for the rest of his life. Under California law, involuntary manslaughter carries a sentence of 3 to 11 years. The judge imposed the maximum term, 11 years, plus an additional year for the use of a deadly weapon. The verdict deeply upset Kirtland's loved ones and many in the broader community, who viewed the sentence as far too lenient given the cruelty of the crime. Some even called for a retrial in hopes of a harsher punishment. But the U.S. Constitution's Fifth Amendment barred a second prosecution for the same offense. Andre's legal team appealed the 12-year sentence, seeking to have it reduced. The appeal was heard on November 17, 2016, by a panel of 3 judges in California's Second District Court of Appeal. The defense requested a mid-range sentence of 6 years. But when the deputy district attorney described the crime scene, calling it one of the most horrific she had encountered, the judges were left with no doubt. In her closing argument, the deputy district attorney emphasized Andre's danger to society. The judges upheld the original sentence, stating that the severity and brutality of the crime justified the maximum punishment allowed by law. Though Kirtland Ma is no longer physically present, his memory endures powerfully in the hearts of those who knew and loved him. Christian, in particular, has spoken about the profound pain of losing someone so special. Friends and family remember that Kirtland disliked saying goodbye, an attitude that now offers them a quiet sense of comfort. To them, his warmth, love, and luminous smile remain alive, woven into every memory and in every life he touched.
Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.